the exciting and somewhat grubby part, which is to clean the weapon. And we first of all make sure once again that the chamber is clear and that the magazine well is clear, because if there was a magazine in there with rounds in it and we move to the next step, what's going to happen? That's right, it would chamber around. So safety, safety, safety when handling a weapon. A weapon is no more dangerous than a car. We all drive or use machinery of various types. A gun is a dangerous device, but so is an electric drill, so is a circular saw, so is a chainsaw. These weapons are no more dangerous than the other things that we handle every single day. We're more comfortable handling other things because we've had more practice at it. One can practice with a weapon, different types of weapons, until one becomes proficient. So the magazine is clear, the chamber is clear, the magazine well is clear. We now lower the slide like that, or allow it to fall forward. But I did that. I want to show you how I did that. This is the slide release catch here. When I push back on the slide, notice that the slide release catch drops by itself, but I have lowered the slide carefully. The only time when it is permissible to allow the slide to fall forward under its own spring pressure, the recoil spring is in here, which we'll look at in a moment, is when you're chambering around, because that takes a lot of work to strip the round from the magazine, introduce it into the chamber. When there is no magazine there, when there's no round to be chambered, allowing the slide to fall forward under its own force can damage the gun, which is why when not loading a round, it's nice just to treat the gun gently, as you would want to be treated, or as I would want to be treated. Okay, so how do we get this wonderful piece of machinery apart? Mr. CZ has given us some clues. These little marks here, these are the takedown notches, and for assembly and disassembly of the weapon, these must be aligned. So how do we align them? This is how, with the hammer back. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm pressing the heel of my thumb on the barrel, and I'm pulling with 2 fingers on the trigger guard, and this is where it gets really interesting. This is actually recommended in the handbook. With the heel of the magazine, one taps the takedown pin, which is this mechanism here. Let me push that back for you, and so that you can see it. See this little spindle here, this pin here, that's the takedown pin. In normal operation, that item is captive in the mechanism of the gun, but when disassembling, we have to put the gun into a certain position, and it's the alignment of the takedown notches there, and we have to give this a few judicious taps with the heel of the magazine, and then we pull it forward with between our fingers and thumb of our right hand if we're right-handed, and then we allow the slide to fall forward. So that's the initial disassembly stage of the CZ75. We then draw the slide forward from the receiver. This part is called the receiver. Now, let's set the slide. I love the way this gun is built, by the way. It is so superbly engineered. I cannot tell you how well this gun is made. The next thing to do is to prevent the hammer from falling against parts of the gun that it should not fall upon. You see, that's the business end of the hammer. That face is designed to strike the firing pin, which would be about here, if the slide were in place, but the firing pin isn't there, neither is the slide. So if the hammer falls forward, it's going to fall upon this mechanism here, which would be damaged. So what we need to do is this. It's the same procedure as if we were making the weapon safe. We grab hold of the hammer, we pull the trigger, and we control its descent against the mechanism of the gun. And now there's no danger of the hammer falling forward unexpectedly whilst we work on the gun. So the thing to do is to clean the receiver of any debris that may have built up. If the gun has been used a lot, it's worthwhile you getting an old toothbrush or something like that just to drive debris from the guide rails here that are machined into the receiver. And also there may be a bit of crud and carbon build up in the magazine well. This particular gun is in pretty clean condition. It does need to be oiled. The slides are visibly dry or the slide rail, I do beg your pardon, is visibly dry of oil. So it has been used a lot since it was last cleaned. So we'll come back to that in a moment. We'll set that aside. Let's look at the barrel and guide rod assembly. As with almost all semi-automatic pistols, the guide rod and recoil spring. The guide rod simply stops the recoil spring doing what the recoil spring would do otherwise, which is to bend all over the place, and so it just keeps it in a straight line, and we can just compress the spring like that and then withdraw it. The interesting thing about this spring is that it's not made of wire, but it's made of flat steel, which has been spiral wrapped, put into a helix. It's a very interesting design. This is the barrel, which lifts out, and we can see from a very cursory inspection that the gun has been used quite a lot since its last cleaning. Let's put a patch on the disc so that we can use that to reflect light back through the barrel. And let's zoom in so that we can see the rifling in the barrel and look for any debris that may have collected there. Maybe there's a bit of coppering from the full metal jacket bullets that are normally fired in this weapon. See, there is some dirt and debris there. Also looking to make sure that the chamber is clear. So let's start by cleaning the exterior of the barrel, and we'll do that just by getting a cotton patch here. We'll zoom out again so that we can see the whole of the table. Comme ça. And we'll just put some oil on the cotton patch, and we're just going to wipe this over the exterior of the barrel and remove, there we are, you see we're getting quite a lot of carbon deposit, little bits of lead particles there as well. If you clean weapons a lot, it's worth using rubber gloves or some barrier cream or something like that on your fingers, because you really don't want to absorb lead into your body. Lead is a heavy metal. It's a carcinogen, which means it can cause cancer, and it's a very unpleasant substance to have, even in minute quantities, inside the human body. Let's look at this little device here. Do you recognise this fella? This is the takedown pin. This runs in this little slot here. When a pistol cycles, it's a violent action. So it follows that these parts must be well lubricated, they must be clean and well lubricated if the gun is to function, first of all, if it's to function well, and secondly, if it's to function for any period of time without breakdown. So let's continue to clean this. This particular weapon is just on the verge of requiring the action of an old toothbrush and so on, but we're going to skip that for the sake of brevity now, and we're just going to clean the inside of the chamber. It's pretty murky in there. You don't really need a clean patch for this, but you do need some gun oil, and you just need to work this around inside there, and then you need to push this through here like that, all the way through the barrel, so that we coat the barrel. Whoops, it's come off the rod. So that we coat the barrel, the inside of the barrel, with a light film of oil. Now, Mr. CZ, being a clever chap, he's provided us with a cleaning brush, a bit like a pipe cleaner, and we can pull that backwards and forwards through the barrel. And this is a very appropriate tool because it's made of bristle, it's not metal. Many of the cleaning tools that one purchases for gun cleaning are metal, which is fine, but something a little softer is appropriate, and Mr. CZ provides just the tool. Now, how many times is enough when cleaning the barrel? And I would say I don't actually know, but one is looking for a clean barrel without visible obstruction. I would say that we have broadly achieved that. Again, I'm looking at the monitor rather than looking at the actual device itself, so if you can see something that I can't see, just let me know and I'll look for it. So there we are. So that is basically clean now. Looking at this for a moment, here's the feed ramp on the CZ75. Look how long that is. That's a long way for a bullet to travel. And you can see there's a little bit of wear on there. It's seen some action. So let's give it a little dab of oil. And let's remove any crud that may have built up on it. So we want to leave that in good condition. Okay, so that's the barrel cleaned. And again, on your own weapon, spend as much time as you feel is appropriate, but don't overwork the thing, because you don't want to actually remove metal, but you do want to leave it in good condition. These things here, these show signs towards the heritage of the venerable 1911 design, because these, well, let's back up one step and say this little mechanism here emulates the action of the swinging link on the barrel of a 1911, and this notch here engages with similar notches in the slide. So if we put the barrel in again for a moment, we're going to clean the slide in a moment, but let's just drop the barrel back in. Watch what happens as I push it back. Drops into position. So, and this, as the gun cycles, as the slide goes back, it pulls the barrel back a certain way, and then the link mechanism here with this pin causes the barrel to tilt, ready for a round to be slammed into it as the slide falls forward. So very, I was going to say intricate. I wouldn't use that term really because it has another connotation, but it's a very well thought through mechanism. So let's remove the barrel from the slide again. And what we need to do now is just inspect the slide for damage. We want to give this surface a clean, and we want to clean out any crud that's built up in the rails. Let's look end on the rails, see how the gun functions there. The rails actually are on the outside. I'd forgotten this. On the CZ75, see how it goes together. So the working part of the slide, if I can use that term in the sense of its guidance, is on the outside. That makes it very, very easy to clean indeed, because we can see with the naked eye very easily any obstructions, any dirt that may be in there. So we can see that that's basically clear. What we need to do, well, look, we can see where we need to put the oil by just examining which part of the slide is coming into contact with which part of the receiver. And we can see from there, let's get something to point with. There we are, a ballpoint pen. That face, the inside reveal, the channel, and the bottom of the slide. Those are all the points that need to be oiled on this weapon if we are to avoid metal against metal contact. So the first thing to do is to drop a couple of drops in the slide rail. What could we call this? A groove channel? It's a channel really, isn't it? It's been machined with a milling machine. No expense spared by Mr. CZ in his home country of Czechoslovakia. And on the other side we want to do the same. A couple of drops, one at the back, one at the front, is probably enough because oil migrates by capillary action, particularly in a channel like this, and we want to make sure that those surfaces are lightly oiled. And I say lightly oiled because that's important. We don't want to attract crud. I want that surface there to be clear. A tiny drop of oil here, just the tiniest drop again. There we are. The oil I'm using today is Rem oil. It's made by Remington. I also use military surplus oil, which I find to be extremely good, particularly for preserving weapons. As you will understand, the military has a lot of weapons that are not in constant use, so the requirement there is especially to preserve them, keep them rust free and so on. You may not know there's no stainless steel on this particular weapon, but you may or may not know that stainless steel was invented because of its rust free properties. That's why it's used in so many firearms. Do you remember we were looking at those notches on the barrel? Here are the corresponding notches on the slide, and common sense says that they are thrown together and pulled apart with extreme force. So what we need to do is just drop a drop of oil on there, make sure it's spread around, because we want those mating surfaces to be kept in good condition. Now we pop the barrel back and watch what happens once again as we take it back. Bang! Those notches engage, and that's so that when the barrel is thrown back by the force of the round firing, the recoil, the barrel and the slide move together, but then the barrel is lowered away, ready for a round to be inserted when the whole thing slams forward again. So the barrel stays in that position, the slide slams forward with a round in tow, shoves it into the chamber here very violently. That's why maintenance of weapons is so important. You want the gun to be clean and oiled, free moving, no obstructions, no debris. And just as an aside, whilst we're talking about the barrel, absolutely vital that there's no obstructions in the barrel. You want the barrel to be crystal clear, clean inside. Now this particular weapon, see, very 1911 style. We'll look at the 1911 in another video, but you see here, that bushing there does a lot of work. So, what do? We give it a drop of oil just on the periphery, and capillary action will take that oil around to where it's needed. Capillary action is very helpful in cleaning machinery, weapons, because by definition it will take the oil to where it's needed, because capillary action will draw oil between surfaces. The closer the surfaces are together, the more the oil is drawn. You see how that's left a fine sheen of oil on the barrel, and we didn't do anything except place one very carefully placed drop of oil on the bushing there. So simple, so profound. Okay, and now we reinsert the guide rod and the recoil spring, and again we compress it with our thumb and we just seat it on the little shoulder there on the end of the barrel, and that is the slide and barrel assembly ready to be reunited with the weapon. Okay, and at that point, if you feel that you want to, you can just give the slide rails another touch of oil. There's no right amount of oil to use on a gun or a piece of machinery, and there's no wrong amount of oil to use. It's just the amount which gives you the protection and lubrication that you require without being so excessive that it gets into places that it shouldn't be. And oil should not be in certain places on a weapon. For example, you do not want oil near the ammunition, because oil will seep into the cartridges and cause them to become less than useless. On this weapon you do need a little touch of oil on the ejector mechanism there, if I can get that to go in by capillary action. I think I did there. And because you want that to be pretty free running. So there we have it. Now, we've cleaned the receiver. We've got all the crud out there. In this particular weapon there's no tremendous build-up of muck or material in there. Things that contact items in the receiver, in the slide, you just want to give a touch of oil to there. I'm not going to lubricate the hammer mechanism at this moment. If you were to be doing a more complete overhaul of the weapon, then things to lubricate would be the hammer pin there, the mainspring, which is inside the back of the grip here. That could benefit from some lubrication, as could the lockwork here inside the receiver, but that is for another time. What we're doing now is the basic takedown procedure for field stripping and cleaning, for example when at the range or just before going to the range. For anything more extensive than that, you really need to, unless you're an expert, you need to entrust the weapon to the expert attention of a gunsmith. Okay, so now we reassemble the weapon. Do you see how nice and shiny those rails are? But look, there are no big drops of oil, because we're looking for a film of oil just a few atoms thick. That's all you need. If there were big globs of oil, not only would the gun be very difficult to handle and potentially dangerous to handle because it would be very slippery, But after firing the first few rounds, all those globs of oil would have been blown off anyway, because when a gun works, gas is escaping from every orifice, and you really don't want lots of oil on the surface of the weapon. So there we are, we push that back, we've reunited slide and receiver, and now we've got this wonderful job of lining up the takedown notch. Look, I can even do it with one finger, but before I do that, I'm going to put a little dab of oil on our takedown pin here. I'm going to wipe it first of all to remove any crud that there may be on it. Remember, this is one of the most hard-working parts of the weapon, so I'm going to be slightly more generous in the film of oil that I give to this thing. And I'm going to park it there in anticipation of getting the slide and the receiver in the right position. And now I do that, and now I resort to the heel of the magazine again. It's difficult to hold it in place. Whoops. There. I was overdoing it with the heel of the magazine there. It's easy to do just when the slide and the receiver are in the correct registry, one to the other. Any excess oil is cleaned away. Sometimes you get little spots of oil at the back of the weapon there. Get those cleaned away. And there we have the CZ75 Compact. Now we know the gun is safe at the moment because we've just reassembled it from cold, as it were, so we know there's nothing in the chamber. Let's go over that decocking procedure again on a weapon that has no manual decocker. There is no decocker here, just a safety. And some would say, well, you don't need a decocker in the presence of a manual safety like that. I would beg to differ, but it's personal choice. So what do? We hold the gun like this, finger off the trigger, we get a grip of the hammer, we pull it back, we pull the trigger, and we lower the hammer slowly. And actually it creeps through our fingers. It's like, you know, I don't know, a pencil being pulled from one's fingers. The mainspring pressure is sufficient that the hammer makes its own progress through one's fingers, and one can control it simply by the strength of one's grip, as it were. It's important. This is a gun longevity tip here. It's important that when you are operating the mechanism by hand, that you don't, as it were, cause the parts to grate. And what I mean by that is you don't pull the hammer back, but not very much, so that it hangs on the edge of the sear. The sear is the device that controls the release of the hammer. You don't want to do it. You want to pull the hammer well clear of the sear, because we're not, the objective here is to drop the hammer. It's not to cause the sear to wear out. And so good practice again is to pull the hammer well back, allow it to fall forward slowly between one's fingers so that it comes to rest. And that's safe to do on a live round. There is another technique with the right thumb here, where one pulls the hammer back, releases the trigger, and allows the hammer to fall forward slowly. And the serrations here are actually a safety device because they end up pinching the skin on your thumb here, and so that skin acts as the brake on the travel of the hammer. But I prefer what I think is a more robust technique here, which is to pull the hammer back between two fingers and allow it to move slowly forward, and again control the travel of the hammer through your fingers by the strength of the grip exerted, and then release the trigger. So there we are, the CZ75. It's one of the finest handguns ever designed. The design for it is in the public domain, which is why there are many imitations of it now. But it truly is an accurate, reliable, safe weapon to own and to fire. Remember the basic rules of gun safety. Never point the weapon at anything that you don't intend to destroy. Only put your finger on the trigger when you have decided to make the decision to fire, not when the gun is simply on target. Regard every gun as loaded until you have proved, not what people have told you, until you have proved that it's safe. And if you find yourself around people who do not obey basic gun safety rules, withdraw. They're not your friends, they're idiots. And you don't want to be around people like that, you don't want to associate with them. There's nothing big or wonderful in associating with people like that, because one of the things that goes with gun ownership is great responsibility. It's just like driving a car. When we drive a car, we are responsible for our actions. We are responsible for driving according to the speed limit. We are responsible for keeping, maintaining awareness of everything that's going on around us, and making sure our actions are safe both for ourselves and other road users. With weapons, we have the same degree of responsibility. And so there we are, the CZ75. I commend it to you. Have fun with yours, and let me know how you get on. Uncle John signing off.